In this video, we're going to learn about binding source priorities. What does this mean? We have talked about different binding source. There are headers, there are query strings, there are root parameters, there's HTTP body. All of these different source can be bound to. But when we have parameters that can be bound to any of those, what are the priorities? The first one is explicit. So if you have an endpoint handler parameter with explicit binding, which means that you specified the source. So for example, from query, right? So if you specify it, then that one takes priority. Let's take this for example. Previously, we have this person class defined right here with the bind async method. So it's supposed to just go into the HTTP context and grab the data from there. But if you specify this comes from the body, guess what's going to happen? Let's run it and let's go to Postman and let's go to get person. And you can see that in the body, we don't specify anything. And in the header, we already specified James. And the parameter, or we already specify 100. But if we click on send, what coming back is ID is empty, and name is empty. What does that mean? It means that because the fact that you specified from body, it went to the body and didn't find anything. Therefore, this is null and this is null. So you get ID is empty, name is empty. So if you remove this, then it recovers back. So that's what I'm saying here, that if you do already have explicit binding specified as attribute, then that one takes the first priority. Okay. Secondly, if you're working with a complex type and the complex type has the build async method specified already, then it's going to use that. It doesn't even consider about anything else. It's going to just use that. And you already seen that once we remove this, right? You have seen that in the previous lesson, the bind async method takes priority. So let's actually give it a try again. This time we can do something funny. So let's go over here. And if we send this way, we get ID is 100, name is James. But what if over here, I provide the P parameter? We can do whatever here, right? Because it's not going to be used. So the P parameter has a value A, B, D. And then we click on send. We still get the same result, which means that the P parameter is ignored. But usually when you have this defined as P, and then you have the P parameter or the P query string specified in the query string, it's going to use the query string, right? That's the default behavior. But here, because in the class, person class, we have this bind async specified. This one takes priority. Okay, that's the second priority. Go back to our diagram here, and we have the third one, which is binding primitive type to root parameter. So if we have a primitive type, for example, this one, this is not a good example. This is array. So let's duplicate this. Let's say we change this to people, and then we just try to grab a specific person. So we don't need array, we just need the ID. Here, we can replace the logic to get a person, right? Get a person based on. So this, I'm gonna ignore the logic here. So if you have a parameter in your endpoint handler function here, this ID is going to be bound to the root parameter if there is one. So if I have a root parameter, this is definitely going to be bound to this. So that's the third priority. And the fourth one is bind the primitive type to query string. So if there is no root parameter, then this one by default can come from the query string as long as the query string's key is ID. Right? It's the same as this. It's case insensitive. Right? That's the fourth one. The fifth one is binding array to query string or header, which you have seen it right here. This is from header. You can remove this, which means that it's going to come from the query string. So that's the fifth one. And last but not least, the information can be bound to the body. So that means when all of this is not happening, then information comes from the body. So this is actually a pretty important lesson. So if you run into a problem with data binding just doesn't work, then come back to this lesson and look at the sequence here. This one takes the first priority and this one takes the last. So when you look at the sequence, you might be able to figure out why your model binding doesn't work. All right, that's everything I want to cover in this video. I will see you in the next one.